The belief is, I failed once, I will always fail. Now you question that. I succeeded so many times, and if I failed once, I need to learn and I need to move ahead. So reframe the way we look at things. This mind is the cause of your bondage, and the mind will be the cause of your liberation. Our brain, the physiology, is hardwired for negativity. It's
Mm,
unfortunate, but that's the way it is. दृष्टि बदलने से सृष्टि बदलती है. If you change
beautiful.
the way you look at things, the things, their relevance for you changes. The
Mm,
modern day scenario, pleasure has become so readily available, which was never there for the last so many hundreds of millennia.
mm.
And what is needed is to strengthen our higher self.
Welcome back to another episode of the Inspiring Talk podcast. In this episode, I have conversation with Swami Mukundananda. Swami Mukundananda is a world-renowned spiritual teacher who have taken the wisdom of yoga, meditation, and shared it with the world. And he created something called as JKYog. In this episode of the Inspiring Talk podcast, we're going to talk everything about our thoughts. Every single day, we think thousands of thoughts, and oftentimes, a lot of them are repetitive ones, and a lot of them are negative ones. This episode is your master class on how do you manage those thoughts, how do you discipline your thoughts, how do you tackle negative thoughts and use your thoughts for success. The Inspiring Talk podcast, I'm focusing a lot on bombarding you with the ideas that can transform your life. And this episode is one such episode. And you will also learn how do you think creative thoughts. This episode is very, very powerful. And if you absorb the ideas from this episode, it can completely transform your life. Let's jump into this. Welcome back inside yet another episode of the Inspiring Talk podcast. And I'm super, super excited to have Swami Mukundananda ji back again on the show. Swami ji, welcome to the podcast.
Namaste, Bijay. Pleasure to join you yet again for another session.
Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you so much for being on the show. Last time we did the podcast on the Inspiring Talk, a lot of people loved that episode and they have been asking that, hey, why don't you bring Swamiji back? And here we are. And first of all, congratulations on your new book, The Power of Thoughts. I finished reading this book and I was blown away with the amount of insights that you have um, included in this book on the topic of thought. And this episode, we're going to go deep into the power of thoughts and how it can really transform our lives.
Very good, Bijay. I am looking forward to it because apart from the book, this topic is so integral to the knowledge that I teach, and it's very dear to my heart as well.
So, Swamiji, I'll jump straight into this. Why should someone pay attention to their thoughts if they want to change their life?
Yes, Bijay, all of us are looking on how to enrich our lives, how to make our works more effective and impacting, and ultimately to enhance the level of our inner joy and fulfillment. Now, all of these is tied to our thoughts. We are always focused on actions on the outside, but we are missing out the link that every action has its seed in the thoughts that originate. And we
Mm,
don't do anything until first the intention is created. So, if we wish to improve our actions, we have to start with thoughts. And not only that, our health is determined by our thoughts,
mm,
is tied up to the thoughts. The more medical science is exploring this mind body connection, they
mm,
are realizing that so many of the ailments they have a mental aspect to it. whether it is
Mm.
rheumatoid arthritis or fibromyalgia, lupus, and irritable bowel syndrome, ulcers, diabetes, heart problems. So our cells in our body are constantly listening to the thoughts. And those
Mm.
thoughts are subtle bundles of energy and they are impacting the body as well. And that is why this idea of holistic health has become popular.
Mm.
And apart from that, Vijay, thoughts impact the entire environment.
Mm.
When you walk into a temple, you naturally get good thoughts, any house of
Mm.
worship. On the other hand, when you go to a marketplace, you get different kinds of thoughts, right? So, what is the reason? That building has been impacted by the thoughts of the millions of devotees who have prayed
Mm.
and worshipped out there. And that
Wow.
has got lodged into it. So, in the book, I have related the episode of Shravan Kumar, that Shravan Kumar was dutifully carrying his parents.
Mm.
And he was such an obedient and loyal son. But at one place, he put them down and told
Mm.
his mother and father that
Yeah.
how long am I going to serve you like this? Enough is enough. I'm fed up. So the
Mm.
father realized that my son's mind is getting affected by the environment. He understood it was the place where Surpankha had stayed. So Surpankha's evil, obnoxious thoughts had impacted the environment. So he told Shravan that let's walk a little bit ahead. And when they
Mm-hmm.
went a little further ahead, his thoughts changed. You know,
Mm.
so in a nutshell, thoughts are so crucial to the quality of our life experience.
So our thoughts are not only making us do the actions that we do, or what we are today is the reflection of the thoughts that we think. And you are also saying that there is a very powerful mind body connection.
Yes, yes, Bijay, definitely we are ultimately what we think. Our level, that is what the Buddha said, isn't it? That it is our thoughts that determine our personality. And that is what the Vedas have been saying for thousands of years, that man eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayo. This mind is the cause of your bondage, and the mind will be the cause of your liberation. It's not
Wow.
all the tilaks you put on or the dresses you wear, etc. That's all very well. These are helpers in
Mm.
helping your mind create the right kind of thoughts. But if only putting on a tilak or wearing a kanthi could suffice, then Kabir ji
Mm.
says, Kanthi bandhe hari mile to banda bandhe kunda, that if it was so easy, I'll tie a kunda around my neck. So the
Mm.
externals are definitely important. That is what religion presents to us: externals,
Mm.
rituals, customs, traditions. But spirituality goes inside to the core, and that is where the thoughts become of paramount importance. So, like I said, when we say the mind is the cause of bondage and mind is the cause of liberation, the mind is like a factory which is
Mm.
creating thoughts. So if we want to improve the quality of our thoughts, we have to also pay attention to the state of our mind.
Mm. So, Swamiji, you mentioned about our environment determines the thoughts, and when we're in any of the temple or any of the um, place where we go to worship or pray to God has completely different energy, and we think different thoughts. But generally, why do most of us think a lot of negative thoughts? Where does these thoughts come from in the first place?
Yes, Bijay. Our brain, the physiology is hardwired for negativity. It's
Mm.
unfortunate, but that's the way it is. Now, consider a fish in the ocean. It has got positive stimuli in the environment, food for it to eat. And it has also got negative stimuli, the shark that is coming to eat it. So
Mm.
the fish is facing these two kinds of things in its environment. Now, the positive, if it misses out, it's not so
Mm.
serious, it will get more food. But if it misses out the negative, game is over. That
Mm.
is why if you were to design a fish, you would also give it a negativity bias. The brain
Mm.
should be focused on the negatives, primed for it. The same is for all the creatures in the world.
For the survival.
And that's right. So in our case, we are also having that physiology, even though in our case it is not life threatening. For example, let us say that one relative kind of hurt our ego in some way. So it is not a matter of life and death, but our brain and mind perceive that negative and they go on repeating it again and again and again. Like, for example, if the fennel seed, the soft, gets stuck in your tooth, then your tongue will keep on revisiting that. It has
Mm.
got 32 places to go, but the tongue doesn't care. It is primed on the negative one. Well, likewise, we have this tendency that somebody praised you 10 times, but he gave one criticism. And our mind keeps on thinking about it. Why did he say that? Or let us say you did 10 right things and made one mistake. Now the mind is
Mm.
thinking, oh my God, I made that one mistake. And we did 10 good things as well, right? So, a partial answer to your statement is the negativity bias. And beyond that, what happens is that when we repeat a thought pattern, our neurons they get wired in that manner, as the saying goes, that neurons that fire together, they wire together. So if we
Mm.
have thought negative thoughts hundreds of times in a few days, then that pattern gets stuck in the mind. It becomes a mindset. And then
Mm.
it becomes like a vicious trap that you keep falling into it more and more and more.
Mm. That absolutely makes sense because the what I have realized is when you think some negative thoughts or like you said, like, hey, this happened to me, your brain will start collecting evidence to prove the first thought that you had, and then you keep on going deeper and deeper into it. And the same goes with positive one as well.
That's right. So ultimately, we have to realize that it's an option that we have. That nobody is forcing us to think negative.
Mm,
So we don't like negative thoughts. And why is that? Every thought has a feeling attached to it. So
mm,
when you think thoughts of envy or thoughts of worry, your own feeling tells you, I'm not liking this, right?
mm,
So now the option is there with us. We replace the negative with the positive. If the
mm,
mind is suggesting, I am a failure because I failed in that particular interview, now you question the belief. That is the
mm,
basis of this thought. So the belief is, I failed once, I will always fail. Now you question that. I succeeded so many times, and if I failed once, I need to learn and I need to move ahead. So reframe the way we look at things. That
mm,
option for reframing is always there. Like, for
mm,
example, one nurse was relating her experience. She was in the army hospital and she was tending to two soldiers who had returned from the battlefield with their one leg blown off. So both
mm,
had suffered similar injuries due to grenade explosions. Now, one of them was just complaining and complaining. so bad. The brigadier sent me in the wrong place, and my comrades did not protect me. And why did the government declare war in the first place? He had a string of complaints. His mind was so
Mm.
negative. And the other soldier in the same situation, he was saying, "Oh my God, I have been blessed today by God's protective hand. I could have lost my life. And somehow or the
Mm.
other, I just lost a leg. I am sure I must
Mm.
have done very bad karmas in the past." And he has let it go with a small wound. What is there? I'll get an artificial limb. So he is looking at the same thing with in positive light. Now, no matter
Mm.
what the situation, we always have that option. Like now,
Mm.
one person said, "I have to pay my taxes. How bad?" And then he
Mm.
reframes that, "I thank God I have taxes to pay because it means I have an income that I receive." I have to
Mm.
clean up after my friends. Party, but thank God that I have to clean up because it means I have friends who come to my house for a party, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
there's a saying in Hindi, दृष्टि बदलने से सृष्टि बदलती है. If you change
Beautiful.
the way you look at things, the things, their relevance for you changes. We need to
Mm.
learn how to positively reframe things.
That's so beautiful. And where does somebody begin to start positively reframe it? Where does it begin? Does it begin at awareness?
That's right. The first step would be awareness. So this is self-awareness, where you become aware that I am thinking thoughts that will harm me. If that
Mm.
awareness is not there, then change cannot happen. Like you try
Mm.
telling somebody that, why are you keeping resentment in your heart? It's hurting you. And the person says, why should I not keep resentment when that person has done something so bad to me? So, first
Yeah.
of all, the self awareness has to come that I am hurting myself. Like
Mm.
somebody said, that keeping resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other guy dies. So,
Mm.
when we are self aware, we then realize, oh my God, it is my own thoughts are determining my happiness. So, the beginning has to be in self awareness. And then
Mm.
you move on to the next step, which will be substitution, which I talked to you about. Substitution means that if you are getting a harmful thought, you replace it by a beneficial thought.
Mm. Redirect your thoughts.
That's right. And then the next step will be what I have called in the book sublimation, which means you start
Mhm.
repeating the positive thought. And by
Mm.
doing that, you create a positive neural track in your mind. And slowly, slowly, that positive thought will become natural to you. Like people
Mm.
ask me, they say, Swamiji, you teach positive thinking. So do you ever think negatively yourself?
I wanted to ask you that question. That was going to be my next question for sure.
So I then start scanning over the last 6, 7 years. Did I ever think any negative thoughts? And I can't remember any occasion. So why? Because it's not that there have not been problems. When you have work of this magnitude, there are challenges on a daily basis. But I am just solution oriented, which means there's no point revising the problem in your head. If there is a
Mhm.
solution, work on it. If there's no solution, then learn to tolerate and bear with it.
Mm. I think that's a really great way to manage your negative thoughts. You start with awareness, be aware of it, and then you substitute it or redirect it to positive thoughts. And then you repeat the positive thoughts so that it becomes second nature to you to look at the positive side of things.
That's right. Very correct.
So, Swamiji, we are in the era and the age where we are, you talk about disciplining your mind and disciplining your thoughts in the book. And we are here in the times where we are distracted, our attention span is reducing day by day. How can we still ensure that we are not distracted and manage our brain and still stay positive?
Yes, Bijay, we all as human beings have this dichotomy in our personality where there is the higher nature, which wants a fulfilling life, which wants to do good things and become a good person. And we have the lower nature, which is looking for immediate gratification, which is subject to hatred, envy, ego, etc. So we have that aspect of our personality and we have the other aspect as well. Now, in modern times, we are feeding that lower nature because of all the stimuli from all sides. All these are increasing the pleasure tendency of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 40 years ago, if you wanted some kind of pleasure stimuli to look at beautiful things, etc., you would have to go in the marketplace or something, you go around, right? Now, what? It's all completely changed. You go onto your social media and you just flick maybe 400 videos in 1 minute's time. So you get one kick, another kick, second kick, third kick.
Mm,
So what people are doing is giving them pleasure, but what they are not realizing is it is completely changing their neurology.
mm,
And the propensity of the mind for pleasure is just getting inflamed. And that is what is coming in the way of maintaining focus. To
mm,
maintain focus means that even though a work is not interesting, even though the mind complains it's boring, yet we are able to keep the beam of our attention there because it's a high value activity and
mm,
we know it needs to be done.
mm,
So the intellect says it needs to be done, it's important. And the mind says, if I can just divert myself and check my WhatsApp, that'll be so pleasurable. So
mm,
that mind has to be kept in check, right? So
mm,
the modern day scenario, pleasure has become so readily available, which was never there for the last so many hundreds of millennia.
mm,
And what is needed is to strengthen our higher self, to
mm,
strengthen our ability to keep that tendency in check. It's like growing a muscle. So, if
mm,
let's say that you want to grow muscles, it's not a 1 day program or a 1 week program or a 1 month program, right? Any physical trainer will tell you that muscles will take 3 months to develop. So, likewise, if we want to grow in our focus, we say, okay, all day long I'm distracted at social media, but when I sit for meditation, I'll focus. It will not work that way. Step by step, we will have to control our lifestyle and
mm,
reduce the low value activities and strengthen our willpower to stick with the high value activities. So every time we know that something is pleasurable but not valuable and we indulge in it, we are reducing our ability for focus, etc. Every time we deny some low value activity, even though it's pleasurable, we are strengthening our inner self. Every time we say yes to something, even though it is painful but valuable, we are strengthening the power of our will. One step at a time. We have to keep on growing in our inner willpower, self discipline.
mm. So, do you think we as human are designed to opt for pleasure and run away from the pain?
That is one aspect of our personality. So, this is the pleasure principle. That
Mm,
we take a look at a little child,
mm,
uh, a 3-year-old child. You tell that child, beta, think of your long term career and do this. It doesn't make any sense to the child.
Mm.
All the child
Mm.
wants is how to get pleasure now. And mummy says, beta, you take amla. It is so the Indian gooseberry. It's got the vitamin C of 10 oranges. It'll boost your body immunity. A 3-year old will say, Mommy, I am not interested in amlas. You give me the chocolate that gives immediate gratification. So the
Mm.
mummy says, they're saying again, आमले का खाया और बड़ों का कहा बाद में पता चलता. My child, the benefit of the amla you will get to know later. So
Mm.
we do have this tendency, and we have another tendency as well. We want
Mhm.
to lift our life. We want to do
Mm.
something meaningful, right? And what gives you the maximum pleasure? When people say that, okay, Bijay, when I listen to the inspiring talk, it makes such a difference to my life. Then you see, oh, my work is impacting. You feel good about yourself, right? So that
Mm.
feeling good about ourselves comes when we are trying to be the best version of ourselves and when we are
Mm.
doing meaningful work. So that as
Mm.
both these aspects are there. That is why
Mm.
the Kathopanishad has summarized this so beautifully. It says there are two pleasures, Shreya and Preya. One pleasure is like nectar in the here and now, but later on it'll become like poison. And the other pleasure is like poison just now, but later on
Mm.
it will be sheer nectar. So it says,
Wow.
now you have to choose between these two, right? That
Mm.
is the dilemma in human life.
Mm. And it's so beautiful that you mentioned about, podcasting. I do get that kick when somebody likes, double taps my Instagram post, and I see that, oh, 5 people liked my last post that I made. But that is a very short lived. It's like a kick that you got, but it's very short lived. But like you said, when somebody says that, hey, I listened to that conversation with so and so person and it made such a difference in my life, then that is something that you want to cherish for a really, really long time.
That's right, Bijay. Uh, the kind of happiness we pursue in life,
Mm,
the quality of our life will depend upon it. People who make ruins of themselves are the ones who kept choosing the wrong kind of happiness. And before they
mm. And what do you
realized,
mean by wrong kind of? Mm,
like for example, now the happiness from chemical addictions,
mm,
it gives you an immediate kick, you know,
mm.
and it's readily available. So you get it for this
No.
much and it's there, right? But that kind of happiness trapped them. It was like the bee that got attracted to the honey and it became its death trap. So slowly, slowly,
Mm,
because they are getting this pleasure so easily, and before they realize it, they are addicted to it. And now they are going to rehab centers, etc. Right? So the whole mess started because they chose the wrong kind of happiness. Now, what I like to tell people is that the real secret of happiness is this: when you try and do good, and when you try and be good, that
mm,
is what will make you actually feel good.
mm. Swamiji, is desire a bad thing? Having a desire of something?
Bad desires are bad things. So when people are tormented by desires, at that time they say, oh my God, desire is a bad thing. Right now, there are four golden truths in Buddhism. The first,
Hmm.
that there is suffering in this world. The second, this suffering has a cause to it. And the third, the cause of suffering is desire. And the fourth, an elimination of desire, suffering will finish. So the
Hmm.
same is there, the way Jagat Yanartho na samosti kamai. Uh, this one poet has written, there's nothing as inauspicious as desire. So, on one side, the scriptures have told us this, but on the other side, it needs to be qualified. There are good desires and there are bad desires. Supposing you desire to grow in wisdom, how can it ever be a bad thing? Supposing
Mm.
you desire to positively impact somebody's life, how can it be a bad thing? Supposing you desire to make your own life a success by reaching the ultimate goal, how can it be a bad thing? So, desire is an energy ability that God has endowed us with. We are not controlling it. That's why we think it's a bad thing. But when we channelize it in the proper direction, it can be one of the best things. And the saints also had desires. One saint says, He Deva, He Daite, He Bhuvanaika Bandho, He Krishna, He Chapal, He Karunaika Sindho, He Nath, He Ramana, He Nayana Bhirama, Ha Ha Kadanu Bhavatasi Padam Drishur Me. Oh, Sri Krishna, I'm so yearning for your darshan. When will you reveal yourself to me? That desire will purify the heart because it's a pure desire.
Mm. Really nice. So, you mention about in your book spending time alone with yourself, and meditation really helps you purifies your thought, helps you reflect upon it. So, what role does meditation and spending time alone has in nurturing good thoughts, positive thoughts?
If we wish to nurture positive thoughts, we should try and spend some time in solitude. People are so busy running from here to there, they are not investing time in for themselves. And when they shut everything off and go into solitude, that will help them, first of all, do a self analysis. Where am I today? It will help them ponder over their goals. What are my long term objectives? What are my strengths and weaknesses? And then it will give them the opportunity or the window to do intentional thinking. So, one is thinking is happening to us, reactive thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So and so said this, I've got angry. So and so said this, I've got happy. This is
Mm-hmm.
reactive thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where external stimuli are creating thoughts. Now, what really makes a difference is intentional thinking, thoughts that we are choosing to bring to yourself. Those thoughts are the high value thoughts where we say, okay, how can I add positivity to myself? Let me count my graces. Let me remember all the nice things that have happened to me, etc. That intentional thinking, for it, we need to feed our mind with proper diet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to take care of your health, you have to avoid junk food. If our diet is
Mm-hmm.
all junk food, then we
Mm-hmm.
can't expect that we'll be healthy and robust. So, likewise, the uh, whatever inputs we take from the environment, this is diet for our intellect. Now, if we just remain careless and keep on exposing ourselves to everything that the media is saying, most of the news is negative, most of the news is not adding any wisdom to us, then that junk is what will fill in the mind. And the
Mm-hmm.
sign of that will be that when we sleep at night, we will get negative dreams. Negative dreams means the subconscious has been affected with negativity because the conscious mind is sleeping and the
Mm-hmm.
subconscious is just throwing up what it is full of. So we should take conscious steps in our waking state to feed our mind. That is why Mahatma Gandhi had a very simple instruction, deceptively simple. His three monkeys. The sun bura, dekh bura, bol bura. Hear no evil, see no evil, say no evil. Right?
Hmm.
So fill your mind with wisdom, hear the divine messages, the teachings of the saints, the sacred writings in our holy books, and then when you stay in isolation, contemplate over it and create those kinds of thoughts. That, as we say, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, may all souls be happy. May all souls
Hmm.
be prosperous. May nobody
Hmm.
be miserable. Now, when you bring these thoughts to yourself, it will benefit the world, but even more, it will benefit us. That positivity.
Hmm. So, Swamiji, is that the ultimate goal, that we all want to be happy and we all want to be satisfied with our life?
Bijay, happiness is definitely the goal of all human beings. There is no doubt about it. Nobody wants to be miserable. And nobody will go around saying, how can I be unhappy? So, happiness is again the nature of our very being. That is
Hmm.
why the moment we were born, we ra- raised a slogan, give me happiness. It was not in those words, but at the time of birth, we started crying. Why?
Hmm.
Because birth was a painful experience. And by crying, we expressed ourselves. I did not come in this world for pain. I had come for happiness. What is going on? Ooh. From that day till today, incessantly, the pursuit of happiness is going on. So you are right that we are looking for happiness. But the point is, this urge for happiness is not the goal in itself. It is
Hmm.
pointing us towards a goal. So we
Hmm.
should ask this question that nobody taught me to seek happiness. I was taught so many things by parents, by teachers. You should tell the truth. You should never steal anybody's property. But nobody told me you should seek happiness. It should not happen that you start seeking misery. This instruction
Hmm.
was never given to us, which means without anybody's teaching, we learned I need happiness. So where is this urge coming from? And the Vedas are telling us, Anando Brahmeti Vyajanat. Your soul is a part of an ocean of happiness, whichever name you call that by, God, Ram, Krishna, whatever. So we are tiny fragments of an ocean of happiness. When
Hmm.
Swami Vivekananda, he was the first Swamiji to go from Bharatvarsh to USA. And when he would begin his talks, he would say, O ye children of immortal bliss, your souls are all little children, little fragments of immortal bliss. So that
Hmm.
urge for happiness is pointing us towards the supreme, that until you reach that destination, you will not find the fulfillment.
Hmm. That's really, really powerful. You mentioned earlier about, counting the grace, and a lot of times I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this right now can feel that, Swamiji, there is something that's going on in my life. Maybe I'm struggling financially, maybe I'm struggling with relationship, maybe I'm struggling with, there could be n number of things, maybe with my health and so on and so forth. In those moments, it's very, very difficult for you to think positively and really help yourself come out of those cycle of thoughts. So what role does gratitude really play? What happens when we start counting grace, as you say, or gratitude or blessings? What role does that play in changing that narrative on your head?
Hmm. Yes, adversity is more common than positive circumstances. This is the university of hard knocks. So we seem to move from one challenge to the next challenge to the next challenge. That is
Mm.
why, on one side, the moment the COVID situation eased off, there was the Russia Ukraine war. And people said, Swamiji, what is going on? We seem to move from one crisis to the next. But on a personal level, also, that is how life is. There's one crisis and then the next and then the next. So we should uh, keep this in mind that the universe is not against us. And if it is sending challenges our way, they are also blessings in disguise. And in fact,
Mm-hmm.
it is in facing challenges that we are forced to exert our wisdom, exert our self control, and manifest our latent potentials. So the inner growth, it happens in the face of adversities. I like to give the example of the caterpillar.
Mm.
It weaves a cocoon around itself and emerges as a butterfly. Now, one child learned this in his general science class in grade 5 in school. And when he was returning from there, in the rose bush in his garden lot, he found a cocoon hanging. And he said, wow, this is my personal laboratory. So every day while going and coming, he would check the state of the cocoon as the butterfly emerging. And one day, sure enough, a little tear was now visible. Since it was a holiday, he was returning after every hour to check it up. And by midday, the butterfly was now visible. It was ripping apart its house of the last few weeks to emerge in the beautiful world. But halfway through, it seemed to get stuck. So it seemed to be jammed, and the cocoon was bobbing up and down, up and down. The boy thought, oh my God, such a difficult situation for the butterfly. Let me do my good deed. He ran home, got a pair of scissors, and snipped the cocoon, thinking it'll fly off, but it dropped to the ground. And then he saw it was cringing around in circles. And he looked carefully. Its stomach was swollen and the wings were shriveled. He thought this will soon correct itself, but he didn't know it would never correct itself now. That struggle of getting out from the cocoon was what the butterfly had needed to press the fluid from its stomach into the wings. Without the
Mm.
struggle, it would remain forever crippled like this.
Mm.
Likewise, what we call as adversity, our bad karma, bad destiny, is actually God's way of helping us fill our divine wings for the spiritual
Wow.
flight to the highest journey. We people don't realize we look for somebody who'll take away all our problems, make life problem free. But life is the manifestation of our potential under circumstances that tend to press us.
I think this is one of the most beautiful, beautiful explanation that I've ever heard about adversity and how it prepares us for bigger and better things in our life.
Well, Bijay, there is in the Chandogya Upanishad a question asked that why does God send natural calamities?
Mm.
Sometimes there's a hurricane, cyclone, tsunami. Is there a defect in the design of creation? Like if
Mm.
somebody has a stomach upset, they keep releasing gas. It's a sign that the stomach is not well. So, is there a defect in God's design that first there's an earthquake, then a volcano, etc.? But when the laws of nature are so immense that from the tiniest Higgs boson to the biggest galaxies, matter is so complex and unfathomable. If God wanted, he could have easily created the world without any natural calamities. It's just like
Mm.
we humans, if we take a little dirty water, we have stomach upset. And the animals are
Mm.
drinking from the river and no stomach upset. He's created their stomach such. So God has deliberately allowed calamities because he challenges humankind. He forces them
Mm.
to cope with the difficulty, to exert themselves and grow in the process. So the purpose behind adversity in the grand design is always to push us to the next level in our growth.
And also, this tells me that never to doubt the universe, or God, or whatever people believe in.
Yes, it was Einstein who said that we all need to make this decision in our lives whether the universe is benevolent or malevolent. So people who see
Mm.
the universe as malevolent, they're always complaining that this bad thing happened, that bad thing happened. And somebody who sees the universe as benevolent says, I am sure there's a silver lining to this cloud. I came across a very interesting story of Anthony Ray Hinton.
Mhm.
This person was a black American, and for
Mhm.
no crime of his own, he got sentenced to death. So he was in the jail. At the time of the crime, he had been in a factory, and the factory owner testified. But his counsel did not fight his case properly, and the forensic experts, they just created a link that the bullet matched with the gun in your mother's house, and that is why it's your fault. So when he landed up in jail, now there he describes he was in a cell 5 feet by 7 feet, and only 1 hour in the day they would let him go out. And the whole row was of people, convicts on the death row. So once in a few while, a convict would be taken out to be killed, and that convict would be walk in front of his cell. So in that situation, he remained positive. He became a friend of the convicts, guide for them, and the guards, they campaigned for his release. He somehow managed to have a good advocate who was fighting his case. Finally, the Supreme Court of the United States unanimously declared him non guilty, and he was released. So, when he came out after 30 years of wrong imprisonment,
Wow.
so CNN and others interviewed him, and he was asked that, don't you have bitterness towards the people who did this? So he said, look, if I keep bitterness inside, then I will still be in jail. He said, I have released it all. Whatever happened, my mother taught me, he said, that anything which falls from the heavens can never be bad. So some people run away from the rain. I run into the rain. My mother told me that don't try to be a billionaire because so many billionaires are unhappy. Try to be a happy person and you'll bring happiness to others. He said that if this has been arranged by the universe, it was to make me a better person. Now, whatever happened, happened, but he had faith that the universe is working in his favor.
I think this is, really, really powerful story, and I'm sure I'm going to remind myself of this story every single time I have this iota of doubt on the universe's plan. And I'm sure, listeners uh, now also got the perspective on how powerful this story is, and what a great perspective on, trusting in the universe's plan. Um, Now, coming back to the thoughts and the things that we're discussing in this episode, Swamiji, for the creative people, like me, or the other people who are listening to podcasts, who are constantly creating something, maybe it's their art or music, or whatever they are creating, can we leverage our thought to become more and more creative? If so, then how can we use that, bring creativity in our thoughts?
Absolutely. The thought potential we have is going untapped. Now, banks may fail, economies may regress, institutions may collapse. But the treasure chest in between the two ears that we contain can always be harnessed. And with thoughts, we can do so much. So, why is it that there have been few like Albert Einstein, Thomas Alva Edison, who utilized their mind's creativity, to completely change, make a paradigm shift in the lives of people, and not everybody is able to do it because people fall into the trap of commonplace thinking. Everybody is thinking like this. Let me also think like this. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you were told to wear somebody else's underwear, you'd say, "Oh, come on, how can I do it?" But we don't mind wearing other people's thoughts, right? So
Mm.
everybody's thinking like this. Let me wear them in my head as well. And we fall into the trap. This is how it has always been done. There's a story of the British House of Commons. A stairway leads up, and at the bottom of the stairway, there used to be one man standing. And that went on for decades and decades, and nobody knew what purpose is served by his standing until somebody went into it, and the facts unearthed were that about 50 years ago, this man's grandfather had been asked to stand there because wet paint had been put on the railing. So until the paint dried up, he was supposed to be there to tell them that, look, don't touch it because it's wet. Now, since that, it continued and nobody asked. Like for 1,000 years in Europe, people believe that men have got more teeth than women. And why? Well, Aristotle said it. So Aristotle just said it without even opening his wife's mouth and counting. And everybody accepted it because Aristotle said it. So likewise, we have to realize that there's this rut. And for creative thinking, you want to get out of the rut. Now, how do you get
Mm.
out of the rut? I have written in detail in this book because I actually experienced it.
Mm.
I wrote this book during the COVID period. In fact, this was the third book that I wrote in the COVID period. So I was
Wow.
in one city for a month for this book. And I would write, and then I would reach a writer's block. And at that time, then I'd say, okay, now what should I write about? I seem to have drained out. I would just go for a walk. And the moment I would start walking, thoughts would suddenly start flowing into me, ideas and creativity. And the first day it happened, I thought, okay, great. I came back and wrote 1,000 words. And the next day, same thing, next day, same thing. Then I realized that this is an essential creative process. That first you exert your conscious mind on something and then give a break to the conscious mind. Just go for a walk or do a habitual activity or just sit and listen to music. And then the subconscious mind gets to work. Subconscious
Mm.
mind creates new links, new connections, explores new possibilities. So that's how Thomas Edison was also working. Thomas Edison's style was that he would think, and then fall asleep. And then he would
Mm.
wake up and he would have the ideas. So it was
Mm.
just giving the conscious mind a break. And Salvador Dali was a novelist, a creative painter, thinker, poet, playwright. So he was considered extremely creative. His style was very amazing, where he would keep on thinking, and he would sit in his armchair with a key in his hand and a metal plate below. So when he would fall
Mm.
asleep, the key would fall into the plate with a clang and wake him up. And then he would find these
Mm.
ideas coming to himself. So there is,
Mm.
see, one is focused thinking. Focused is just like the torch beam. You can either focus it or you can diffuse it,
Mm.
right? So
Mm.
at times you have to focus your conscious mind. And at times for creative thinking, you have to make it diffuse.
Mm.
So that diffuse thing, you give little rest to the conscious mind and let the subconscious get to work. It will start, have faith. It starts coming up with great ideas.
Mm. So, Swamiji, do you believe that the ideas flow through the universe to us? Because I've also heard people say that your ideas are not yours, or what I say the wisdom is not mine. It flows through the universe or God or the higher power that you believe in.
And a lot of people express that. When
Hmm.
we are doing a work that is meaningful and beneficial, so definitely the universe can make us an instrument for that work. I just happened to be listening to Elizabeth Gilbert, the author of Eat, Love, and Pray. So that was a
Hmm.
phenomenally successful book, which became a movie as well. And Elizabeth Gilbert, in that TED talk, she expresses that some power comes in, and I keep writing, and then it's gone, and I am stuck, and I just wait for that power to get connected again. And I was seeing the comments below the talk that how can you be so unscientific? Nothing like this happens. So our logical mind wants to be reductionist, but
Hmm.
there are so many unexplained phenomena that go beyond just simple, 2 plus 2 is equal to 4 thinking. And creativity is one of them. The ideas definitely are coming to us from the universe as well.
Hmm. So what I also feel is for you to have those that flow for the universe to come in, you need to be prepared. You need to be aligned spiritually to the universe, right? So how can we leverage our thoughts, or rather, how can our thoughts, how can we align spiritually ourselves to sort of be prepared for this kind of flow?
Okay, Bijay, that is an important question. See, Swami Vivekananda said, an acharya is one through whom the divine power acts. So, to receive that divine power, we need to prepare ourselves for it. We need to attract that grace.
Hmm.
For that, you have to do two things. The first is to become a fit and reliable instrument. Uh, you
Hmm.
would not hand over your property to your little child because you would not have faith that the child would use it well. You'd say, okay, my child, you grow up and I'll give it all to you. So, likewise, the universe says that I need to know that you are, free from lust and free from pride and these things. Only then I'll trust you with all these powers. And the second is, so first of all, we become pure, and the second is that we make our intention pure, which means
Hmm.
the more you start doing things for the pleasure of the universe, the more we attract that divine grace. That is
Hmm.
why people who are engaged in welfare work, slowly, slowly, they start realizing that the most important, or let's say the limiting constraint, is their own purity. And what we really need to do is, alongside with working on the outside, to work upon ourselves. And that, the more we keep working on ourselves, we keep attracting divine grace to us.
On that such a great note, we have come to an end of this conversation. I know, Swamiji, I can listen to you whole day, and I'm just loving this conversation. I'm learning a lot from this conversation, and we can go on and on and on and talk about spirituality, thought, and mind and managing your mind and thought and so on and so forth. But we'll stop there for this episode. And I would like to encourage listeners to check the book out, The Power of Thoughts. I have gone through the book, and this book is just going to transform your life if you just implemented the ideas from this book. And I say that with a conviction because you will get to understand your own mind, your thoughts, how do you manage them, and also, we just spoke about how do you align yourself, and he talks about spirituality and thoughts. Also, there are meditations that you can practice. Thank you so much for writing this book. It's just a beautifully written book with a lot of insights. And thank you so much for being on the show, Swamiji. If you'd like to share a word about the book, that would be great.
Well, thank you for your kind words about the book, Bijay. And it's again been a pleasure speaking to you on your Inspiring Talk podcast. Well, this book, about 30 plus years ago, I asked my spiritual guide, my Guruji, that what is the best way we can help humankind? So he said, the best service you can do is to share good knowledge. So, with that conviction in mind, I have been working. And of course, the internet age has helped the dissemination of knowledge in a bigger way. And these books also do the same very thing. In regard to the topic of this book, as a little child, when I was in grade 8, I was going for a vacation with my parents. And with the start of the vacation, they took me to a bookshop and said, pick a book so you can read it along the way. And I picked up a book that I still remember. It was about energizing the powers of your mind. So that was,
Mm,
as an eighth grader, I got in touch with the thoughts, the importance of thoughts.
wow.
And since then, I've been working on it, teaching about it. And this book is possibly the fruit of those last 50 years of self contemplation
Wow.
on thoughts.
Wow. And it really is a powerful one. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being guest on the show once again. And this episode it has been, more powerful, if not, this episode has been really powerful. And the last episode, like I said in the beginning, people really loved it, and I'm sure people, listeners who are listening to this episode must be buzzing with the ideas, and they're like, oh my god, that's a lot of knowledge and insights and wisdom. I'll put the link of the book in the description of this episode. Thank you so much, Swamiji. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Bijay. A pleasure speaking to you, and my best regards to all your listeners as well.